What happens when a man who built his whole identity around a title meets the woman who now owns it? It started on a Tuesday morning in early October, the kind of morning that smells like coffee and cold air, the kind where everything feels ordinary, right up until the moment it isn't. Hargrove Motors on the corner of Elmwood and 5th in Columbus, Ohio, was the kind of dealership that liked to think of itself as premium. The showroom floor was polished so clean you could see your own reflection in it. 12 luxury vehicles sat under soft white lights like they were on a runway, not a sales floor. Everything about the place was designed to make you feel like you needed to impress someone just to walk in. Dorothy Mae Collins didn't look like she was trying to impress anyone. She was 71 years old, and she walked through the glass front doors, wearing a soft yellow cardigan, a pair of comfortable shoes, and a handbag that had seen better decades. Her silver hair was pressed neatly back. Her eyes were sharp and warm, the way eyes get when a person has lived enough life to stop worrying about what strangers think. She moved slowly, not because she was frail, but because she wasn't in a hurry. She never had been. Dorothy had spent 40 years learning that the people who rush through rooms are usually the ones who don't own them. She stopped just inside the entrance and looked around, took it all in, the layout, the lighting, the positions of the sales desks, the way the service bay connected to the showroom floor through a glass partition. She noticed everything. She always did, but nobody noticed her, not right away. A young saleswoman near the back glanced up briefly, then returned to her screen. A man in a tie walked past her without a word. The receptionist looked up, made eye contact, then looked back down like Dorothy was just background noise. Like she was someone who had wandered in from the wrong part of the building or the wrong part of town. Dorothy didn't react. She just kept looking. She walked slowly toward the center of the showroom and stopped beside a silver sedan, ran her hand along the hood lightly, tilted her head reading the window sticker. Then she straightened up and folded her hands in front of her and waited. And that was when Craig Ellison walked over. Craig was the general manager of Hargrove Motors, had been for 6 years, 44 years old. Pressed slacks, sharp collar, a watch. He made sure people noticed. He'd built this floor into one of the top-performing dealerships in the region, and he knew it. The way he carried himself said he knew it. The way he talked to staff said he knew it. The way he crossed the showroom floor toward Dorothy said he knew something else too. "Can I help you?" He said the words were polite, but the tone wasn't. It was the kind of tone that really means, "What are you doing here?" Dorothy looked at him with a small, steady smile. "Just looking around," she said. Craig glanced at her cardigan, her shoes, her bag. He did the mental math the way some people do, and his face settled into something flat and practiced. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. "Maybe a family member, someone who works here perhaps." "No," she said. "I'm here on my own." Craig's jaw tightened just slightly. "Ma'am, this is a premium showroom. Our inventory starts at $62,000. I just want to make sure you're in the right place." Dorothy looked at him for a moment. Then she looked back at the car beside her. "I can read window stickers," she said quietly. Craig didn't smile. He took a small step forward. "Look, I don't want to waste your time or ours. If you're not here to purchase today, maybe you'd be more comfortable at one of the other lots down the road. They carry a more affordable range." His voice dropped on the word affordable like it was doing her a favor, and there it was. Not a question, not concern, a dismissal wrapped in politeness. Dorothy didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't reach into her bag for a card or a document or a phone. She just looked at Craig Ellison with those calm, sharp eyes and said, "I think I'll stay a little longer if you don't mind." Craig's patience cracked. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have clients expected this morning, and I need the floor clear for appointments." Dorothy tilted her head slightly. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. And it wasn't arrogant the way she said it. It was quiet, almost gentle, like a teacher asking a student to think before answering. Craig didn't pause. "No, ma'am, I don't. And unless you have a scheduled appointment, I'm going to need you to head out." 2 salespeople near the back had stopped pretending to work. They were watching now. A junior associate near the coffee station stood still, cup halfway to his mouth. Dorothy nodded once. "All right," she said. Then she turned and walked back toward the front doors. Slowly. No hurry. Craig watched her go. Straightened. his collar, turned back toward his office. Satisfied, he had no idea he had just made the worst mistake of his career. Here is what Craig Ellison did not know about Dorothy Mae Collins. She was born in Birmingham, Alabama, the third of 7 children. Her father worked at a steel plant and her mother took in laundry, and neither of them ever had enough, but both of them had dignity, and they made sure Dorothy knew the difference between those two things. She grew up watching her parents work themselves to the bone for every dollar, and she decided early on that she would work smarter. Not because hard work was beneath her, but because she had seen what it cost. She put herself through college at 22, studied business administration at a time when half the professors didn't think she belonged in the room. She graduated anyway. Got a job at a small auto parts distributor in Cincinnati. Worked her way up not by being loud, but by being right. Consistently, quietly, relentlessly right. Over the next 4 decades, Dorothy built a career that most people with twice her resources couldn't have managed. She understood supply chains before most people could spell the term. She understood margins and markets and people, especially people. She could walk into a room and within 10 minutes understand exactly who held the real power and who just thought they did. By the time she was in her early 60s, Dorothy Mae Collins had quietly accumulated ownership stakes in several small businesses across Ohio and Indiana, a logistics company, a parts supplier, 2 small retail operations. She didn't talk about it much, never had a reason to. She wasn't building an empire for attention. She was building security. For herself, for her grandchildren, for the great-grandchildren she fully intended to spoil when the time came. And then 3 weeks ago, the call came. Raymond Hargrove, the original founder of Hargrove Motors, had been a friend of Dorothy's late husband for 30 years. They'd played cards together, argued about football, shared Thanksgiving tables more than once. When Raymond's health declined and his own children showed no interest in running the business, he called Dorothy, not as a courtesy, as a choice. I want someone who will respect what I built, he told her. And I know that person is you. The deal had been signed quietly, through attorneys, through proper channels. No press release, no announcement. Dorothy had asked for a few weeks before anything was made official internally. She wanted to see the place first. Wanted to walk the floor. Watch how the staff moved. Watch how the customers were treated. She'd done this before with every business she'd ever acquired. She called it reading the room before you rearrange the furniture. So that Tuesday morning, Dorothy Mae Collins drove herself to Hargrove Motors in her 10-year-old Buick parked in the regular lot and walked in the front door like any other customer. And Craig Ellison walked her right back out. She sat in her car for a few minutes after leaving the showroom. Didn't make any calls. Didn't cry. Didn't fume. She just sat there looking at the glass front of the building thinking. She wasn't surprised exactly. Disappointed maybe. Not in Craig specifically. In the thing Craig represented. The reflex. The assumption. The look at the shoes and the cardigan and decide before a single word is spoken. She had felt that reflex her whole life. In boardrooms. In banks. In stores. In parking lots. People looking at the outside of her and deciding there was nothing worth paying attention to on the inside. And every single time she had made them wrong. Quietly. Completely. Wrong. She started the car. Drove home. Called her attorney Marcus Webb. Marcus, I want to move up the announcement, she said. This week. He paused on the other end. Everything okay? She smiled to herself. It will be, she said. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Hargrove Motors at 9:15 sharp. He was a trim man in his early 50s with a leather briefcase and the kind of quiet confidence that came from winning arguments for a living. He walked to the reception desk, asked for the general manager, and was shown to Craig's office within 2 minutes. Craig looked up from his desk with that practiced manager's smile. What can I do for you? Marcus set a folder on the desk. Effective immediately, he said he represented the new ownership of Hargrove Motors. He slid the document across. Sale was finalized 3 weeks ago. The new owner has asked me to begin the formal transition process starting today. Craig picked up the folder. His smile stayed in place for about 4 seconds. Then it started to slip. He read the name at the top of the document. Dorothy Mae Collins. His eyes moved slower the second time through the page. Then he set it down. "Who is this?" he asked. His voice was still measured, but there was something underneath it now. A hairline crack. Marcus clasped his hands together. "Mrs. Collins is a businesswoman based here in Columbus. She worked with Raymond Hargrove directly. The paperwork is all in order. I can give you time to have your own attorney review everything. I'd suggest you do." Craig leaned back in his chair. There had to be some mistake. Raymond never mentioned selling, not to anyone here. Not to him. "That was Mrs. Collins's preference," said Marcus. "She wanted some time to evaluate operations first. She came in yesterday, actually, to look around." Craig's brow furrowed. "Yesterday." Marcus held his gaze. "You asked her to leave." The silence in the room was very loud. Craig's face went through several things in quick succession. Confusion, the specific sharp horror of someone doing mental math and not liking the answer. Then a particular kind of stillness that comes right before a person realizes exactly how much trouble they are in. "That was her," he said. His voice had gone quiet. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Craig stood up, moved toward the door, stopped, sat back down, ran a hand over the back of his neck. "You have to understand," he started. "She didn't look like." He stopped himself. Didn't look like what Marcus said. Craig had no answer for that. Because there was no good version of that sentence. There was no ending to that thought that didn't say exactly what it meant. She didn't look like someone who mattered. She didn't look like someone he needed to be careful with. She didn't look like an owner. But she was. The announcement went out to all staff by noon. A company-wide email from Marcus Webb's office. Brief. Professional. Effective this week, Hargrove Motors has transitioned to new ownership under the leadership of Dorothy Mae Collins. A brief all-staff meeting has been scheduled for Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Attendance is mandatory. The showroom floor went very quiet after the email hit. People pulled out their phones, looked at each other, whispered. The saleswoman, who had glanced at Dorothy and looked away, was staring at her screen, not reading anything. The junior associate near the coffee station looked like he was trying to remember if he had said anything out loud when the old woman walked by. Two of the senior salespeople were having a very low conversation in the corner by the service bay window. Craig stayed in his office with the door closed. By Wednesday afternoon, word had moved the way word moves in a place where people spend 8 hours a day together. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew that Craig had asked the new owner to leave. Some people heard it one way, some people heard it another. But the core of it stayed the same, no matter how it was told. The manager walked an old black woman out of her own building. One of the service technicians, a man named Terrence, who had worked at Hargrove for 11 years, said it plainly to a colleague during lunch. "You know what that tells you about how he operates when he thinks nobody important is watching." His colleague nodded and didn't say anything back because there wasn't much to add. Thursday morning, 8 a.m., the entire staff was assembled in the main showroom. Sales team, service techs, reception, finance office, administrative staff. They stood or sat in a rough semicircle. Craig was there too near the back. Posture careful, face composed, but his eyes kept moving toward the front door. Dorothy walked in at 8:02. She was wearing a deep burgundy blazer over a white blouse. Her silver hair pressed back the same way. The same comfortable shoes. Same handbag. She hadn't changed her presentation for anyone. She didn't need to. She walked to the front of the room without hurrying, set her bag down on a table beside her, looked around at the staff the same way she had looked around the showroom floor 2 days ago. Slow, steady, reading everything. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was clear and warm. The room was very still. "I'm Dorothy Collins. Some of you may have seen me Tuesday when I came in to look around." She paused. "Some of you may not have noticed me at all." She said that last part without any edge in her voice. Just a fact. Just the truth. "I've been in business for a long time," she continued. Long enough to know that the most important thing you can learn about any operation is how it behaves when nobody thinks anyone important is watching. That's the real culture, not the mission statement on the wall, not the awards in the lobby. What happens in the ordinary moments. That's who you actually are. She let that sit for a second. I'm not here to blow everything up, she said. Mr. Hargrove built something real here. Good service record, solid reputation with a lot of customers. People who came back year after year. That matters to me. I respect what was built. She looked around the room again. But I also believe any business is only as good as how it treats people. All people, regardless of what they're wearing or where they came from or what assumptions you make in the first 10 seconds. Somewhere near the back, Craig shifted his weight. I believe in second chances, Dorothy said. I believe most people are better than their worst moment if you give them the right environment to grow. So I'm not coming in here to clean house or settle scores. I'm coming in here to build something that lasts, something that all of you can be proud to be part of. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Held it up briefly. We'll be implementing some new training. Some new standards around customer engagement. Every person who walks through that door gets the same level of attention and respect regardless of how they look. Regardless of what kind of car you think they can afford. You do not get to make that decision by looking at someone's shoes. Our job is to serve people. All of them. That's the policy. That's the standard. And that's not negotiable. One of the younger salespeople near the front was nodding. Slowly at first, then with more conviction. I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you, Dorothy said. She smiled. It was genuine, unhurried, the kind of smile that had survived a lot of hard rooms. My door is open. I mean that. She picked up her bag. That's all for now. Let's get to work. After the meeting, people moved slowly back to their stations. Low conversations. A few people exchanged glances that meant different things. The young saleswoman, who had looked away on Tuesday, walked up to Dorothy near the front door. She looked nervous. Ma'am, she said, I noticed you on Tuesday, when you came in. I should have come over. I should have introduced myself. I'm sorry I didn't. Dorothy looked at her. What's your name? Keisha Morant. I've been in sales here for about a year. Dorothy nodded. Well, Keisha, you noticed something was wrong. That's the first step. What you do next time is what matters. She tilted her head slightly. There will be a next time, for all of us. The question is what we do with it. Keisha nodded. Yes, ma'am. Dorothy moved toward the office that had been prepared for her. She stopped once and turned back toward the showroom floor. Stood there a moment watching the staff begin to settle back into the rhythm of the morning. Phones ringing. A customer walking in. Someone pulling up the computer screen. Ordinary. Just an ordinary morning. But not the same as before. Craig Ellison requested a meeting with Dorothy that afternoon. He came in, sat down across from her desk. His hands were folded on his lap. He didn't look like the man who had squared his shoulders and told her to leave 2 days ago. He looked smaller now. Not because she had made him that way. Because he had done it to himself. He started to speak. She let him. I made a judgment, based on nothing real, he said. I looked at you and I decided something that had nothing to do with facts. He paused. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what that was. I know what it was. I'm embarrassed by it. Dorothy watched him. Didn't rush. I'd like to stay on, he said. If that's possible. I've built a lot here. I know the operation. I know the staff. I know the numbers. I can be better than I was on Tuesday. I want the chance to prove that. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she said this. Every person in this building is going to be measured on one thing going forward. Results and how you treat people. Those two things together. Not one without the other. You're good at the results part, Craig. She looked at him steadily. The other part needs work. Real work. Not performance. Not policy compliance. Actual belief that every person who walks in that door is worth your full attention. Craig nodded. I understand. She leaned back in her chair. You'll stay on, she said. On a 90-day review. Same role, same responsibilities. But I'll be watching how this floor operates, and more specifically how you operate when you think the moment is small and ordinary and nobody important is watching. Craig exhaled slowly. "Thank you," he said. And it didn't sound like relief exactly. It sounded like someone who had been handed something they weren't sure they deserved and knew it. Dorothy gave him a small nod. That's all. By the end of the first month, 3 things had changed at Hargrove Motors. A new customer engagement protocol had been rolled out, mandatory training on implicit bias and service standards, and sales floor numbers had gone up, not because the cars were different or the inventory changed, but because Keisha Morant was now the top performer on the floor, and she said in a team meeting something that made people quiet. "When people feel seen, they buy," she said. "When they walk in and nobody looks at them, they leave. And they never come back. And they tell everyone they know." She was 26 years old, and she was right. Dorothy walked the floor twice a week. Same unhurried pace. Same sharp eyes. She learned people's names quickly, remembered details, asked about families, about goals. She had the kind of attention that made people feel like the most important person in the room, and she distributed it evenly. The service tech who had been there 11 years, the receptionist who was brand new, the finance manager who had been passed over for promotion twice. She saw all of them. Craig watched her do it, and slowly, quietly, something in how he moved through the building began to change. He started arriving a few minutes earlier, started asking the staff questions instead of just giving directives. One Thursday, he pulled Keisha aside and apologized for something he had done 6 months ago that she had almost forgotten about, but hadn't. She told Dorothy about it later. Dorothy just nodded. "People can surprise you," she said, "when you stop making. It's so easy for them not to." 6 months after Dorothy Mae Collins walked through those glass doors in her yellow cardigan and her comfortable shoes, Hargrove Motors was the highest performing dealership in the Columbus region, not by a little. By a margin that made other managers call the corporate line and ask what had changed. What changed was simple, not flashy, not complicated. Somebody finally ran the building like every person who walked through the door mattered. And it turned out. They did. Dorothy never told the story publicly, didn't call a reporter, didn't post anything. The moment wasn't something she wanted turned into a spectacle. She'd had enough of spectacles. What she wanted was something more durable than a headline. She wanted a place that was different, a place that remembered. She got it. Craig Ellison completed his 90-day review, then his 6-month review. Dorothy kept him on. Not because she forgot what he had done. She hadn't. But because the man who came to work now was making different choices than the man who had walked her to the door. And Dorothy had built her entire life on believing that people could be more than their worst moment. It seemed only right to live by that belief even when it was inconvenient, especially then. One afternoon, a new customer came in. Elderly, a man in his mid-70s, worn jacket, moving slowly. Craig was the first one to reach him, walked over, extended a hand, introduced himself, offered coffee. Sat down with the man for 40 minutes and listened to what he was looking for. Didn't steer, didn't rush, just listened. The man bought a car that day. When Dorothy saw the paperwork, she didn't say a word. She just looked at Craig's name on the sales form and let herself feel something quiet and satisfied. This is the thing about dignity. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It just keeps showing up. Steady, unhurried, doing the work. Long after the moment of reckoning has passed and the lessons have settled in and the room has become a different kind of place than it was before. Dorothy Mae Collins walked into a building she owned and was told to leave. And she left. And then she came back, not with anger, not with a speech, not with revenge in her eyes. She came back with a plan, with patience, with the deep and unshakable confidence of a woman who had never needed anyone's permission to know her own worth. And that, in the end, was what changed everything. Never mistake quiet for weakness. Never mistake a cardigan for someone without power. Never walk someone out of a room without being very sure you know whose room it is. Because some people spend their whole lives building something without making any noise about it. And they will walk through your door one ordinary Tuesday morning and they will see every single thing about you and what they do with what they see. That part is entirely up to them.